Hello and welcome back to another episode of Advanced RC Adventures. A2RC here. This is a channel where we investigate, explore, build and explain, upgrade, and advance Nitro RCs to another level. Come start a new adventure with me. Today we have another special Novarossi. Right here, inside the bubble wrap, this is an engine that is in the 12R family. That same family as the side exhaust C12. This is an M12 Rossi Nova marked 12R engine. Let's get it open and take a look. All of the pre-ran engines and brand new engines that I get in, I go through and clean, inspect, lubricate, put in a desiccant bag, seal it up, and that way it's ready either for long-term storage or for the next install on another build. So let's take a look here. This is a beautiful C12 family, but rear race style engine. Notice it has the same block profile as the other C12s. A nice big M12. So as I understand it, Mugen came to Novarossi and said we wanted some built specific engines very similar to what HPI did for Nova, and this is one of the M series, Mugen series engines that they had branded from Nova to Mugen. On top here we have race. This is the ReR3 version. We looked at on an earlier episode another blue-headed Rex version. This is the Nova version of an LR3. Those LR3 are long strokes, and so they have a little bit longer block, and the head sits a little bit more proud to the top, but it's still a rear exhaust engine. This is a 3-needle carb. Have our high speed, have our low speed for the spray bar, and then our mid-range needle there. So like all of our engine overviews and disassemblies, let's go ahead and take this carb off, do a little look over, go through the engine and all of its internals, and do some comparison to some of the other Novarossi engines you know and love and that we've shown on the channel. So this has a traditional 6mm pinch bolt. Let's pop this off. These carbs are really nice. All billet construction. Has a traditional plastic style Venturi for Rossi. This is actually a 5.4mm Venturi. Standard butyl black O-ring. Nice big long taper on the inner neck of the carb. We have a standard for this series. We have a plastic barb for a high-speed needle. Mid-range is same as some of the other billet 3-needle carbs that we've seen. Interesting enough, this has a Rex logo, even though it's a Nova and has a Novarossi box that comes with it. So that's been interesting. So this engine came pre-owned to me in very good shape. And as I understand it, this Rex slide carb came with it. It's possible it could have been exchanged from the previous owner, but with the engine have such light use on it, it's very possible, and since Rex and Top brand were made and built and distributed from Novarossi, it's possible that Rex was on there either by mistake or normal from the factory. We have our idle adjustment screw right there. So pretty traditional, very similar slide carb from Novarossi for this M12. When I went through this, like similar to my other engines, I like to upgrade to these stainless steel M2.5 backplate screws, and so I did the same there. Not only does it give it a nice shine, but for backplates, it's definitely more than sufficient, and it dresses it up nicely. Plus, you minimize the amount of corrosion potential between aluminum and other steel alloys. Let's pop off the backplate and keep on going through. Now we have these backplate screws off. Let's give it a little measure. These are 6 millimeters long, which is pretty short, and these are an M2.5 stainless steel backplate bolts. Give your backplates a little wiggle as you pull them out to break that seal. This is a pretty traditional backplate from Novarossi. Same black butyl O-ring seal. This is a non-interference backplate. Notice there's no cutout. On this particular backplate, for Rossi, there's no indication for up or down, mainly because it's a non-interference backplate. You can put it on up or down. Either way is correct. Take a look at those internals inside. Let's get that head off so we can take a better look. So as all of you might know, Novarossi comes, generally speaking, with a flat. When I updated and refreshed these, I put some hex bolts in, and let's take a little measure. These look like they're a 14 millimeter M3 bolt, and it's definitely preference. You definitely have to make sure that you have quality hardware if you want to replace it. But in my opinion, upgrading or updating or changing, whatever way you want to look at it, from the flat heads on the Novarossis to a hex style bolt is always a good change to do. So let's take a look at the head. Again, we have race on top, nice blue color. This is an ReR3, so this is a 3-port engine, rear exhaust, head button engine. It's a turbo style engine. So take a look at the head here. Nice shine cuts on the head. This is a bidirectional head, meaning that cooling air can go through the head in one direction, but not the other direction. Notice the cutouts up top here. We have longer slots down below on that left and right side. It's where air can be blown through the head in this direction, but not this direction. Pretty traditional looking style head there, to accept the head button. Has one shim on it. Let's give that shim a little measure. This is a standard for these R12 series engines to start out with a 0.3 millimeter shim. And a relatively standard looking head button. This is a turbo head button. There's no indication for rear, so you can spin this 4-bolt head in any direction. There's no specific front or rear, but this is a nice upgrade to a turbo style plug. This is an ABC construction engine. This has been ran. SG style crankshaft. Let's go ahead and try to get this sleeve out and take a look at the internals. Pop that sleeve up. We'll take a look at this sleeve in just a minute. Pop that piston out. This engine was previously on a G4 build, which we'll see later on the channel. And this had many hours, but still has great pinch and compression. So a standard for these R12s, knife edge on these billet connecting rods. They're all the same or very similar. Brass bushings, oil groove. Machine piston. These are a captured wrist pin style, so there's a clip on either side to hold that wrist pin in. Notice the skirt on this particular one goes all the way around. If you go back, or if you've watched previously the episode on the C12 Novarossi rebuild that we used an HPI branded Novarossi made part, that skirt on that piston was cut out on one side towards that front edge, but the replacement piston had a skirt completely all the way around, very similar to this style piston. So let's go ahead and look at this sleeve. It's going to look very similar to that piston and sleeve setup on that C12 HPI branded Novarossi made engine rebuild. Go ahead and check that out. And we have our boost port, nice long leading bevel. Our exhaust port, no real dog ears. But again, this looks very much the same and probably could be replaced with that HPI part number. And then the transfer ports, nice and long, the slightest bit of bevel on the downward slope, and that's about it. Nothing super fancy about this M12 ReR3 version sleeve, but nonetheless, these are really great engines and have some potential for some future modifications to see what can happen with them in the future. Let's pop this crank out. Put the push block on the table, and hopefully this rod comes out easily, which it does. Just needs to take a little bit of push. SG shaft crank. Now, one update that you'll notice for these rear exhaust engines in the race style Nova and Rex is this has the full circular balance lobe on the crank, but we do have a nice fang here, which some of the side exhaust C12 version cranks could use as a little bit of an update. Let's go ahead and measure that center induction bore. We're at 6.74. So on that other video, we were able to bore that out to over 7mm, which is a big update. If you're curious about that, feel free to check that out. Another thing that's unique about this is on the balance lobe, it's not fully cut out here, but it is cut out on the back to have a little bit of weight reduction. And I'm sure they may have done that as part of a balancing aid as well. The induction window looks relatively normal for the C12 family style 12R engines, 6.5 by almost 10mm. That's a relatively big induction window for a 12. The leading edge and the trailing edge of the induction window is pretty standard. There's no modification here completed, and it is not drilled or filled. But still, nonetheless, we start to see the kind of the progression of these cranks. And this is, I would say, this particular engine is in the world of where we start to see you get out of the club racing, or this is a good club racing engine, and start to get into the world of actual race-specific engines. The horsepower on these 12Rs range between 0.8 to 1.25, and I would suspect that this particular version was right in that range of 0.9 to 1 horsepower. It's really going to be hard to see inside, but some great transfer and boost port cutouts into the block down below. This uses a chrome steel front bearing and rubber shield, and then a traditional chrome steel rear bearing in the back. Nice, made in Italy, very similar to these C12 style blocks. So that helps you and me. We continue to explore through these Novarossi R12 engines that are made so well and so great. We get to go through the history and the adventure. This will eventually make it onto another future build, and it's been on the test stand as well. So feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you like anything 10th scale, nitro, and especially touring cars, then this is the place to be. And thanks for taking the adventure with me.